dear friends. Welcome to another soul-sharing moment on Grey Hair Diaries. I'm a 65-year-old woman. My hair has turned silver, my knees don't bend like they used to, and the mirror these days feels more like a friend who never lies. If you're here listening today, chances are you're walking a similar path, a path where youth has taken a bow and we're learning how to stand tall in the soft twilight of our years. I haven't come to teach or preach. I don't have a manual for how to age gracefully or a perfect list of affirmations to chant each morning. What I do have, though, is something time gave me: perspective. A gentler way of seeing the world, a few scars that finally stopped aching, and a heart that knows the value of a quiet moment. Today, I want to share something very simple, a sentence really, but one that has held me through the nights I thought I wouldn't make it. It's this: as I grow old, God is my strength. I used to be strong. I raised 3 kids on my own, worked for 40 years, cooked, cleaned, cared for an aging mother-in-law, and taught Sunday school on the weekends. People called me Superwoman, the strong one, the rock, and I smiled through it all. Even when I felt like collapsing, because that's what women like us were taught to do. But then the years crept in, softly, silently, and I began to slow down, not by choice, but by necessity. My joints began whispering their complaints. My memory played little tricks. The phone rang less. People stopped asking for advice. I stopped being the one who holds it all together, and instead, I started feeling invisible. There were nights when I'd stand in front of the mirror, staring into a pair of tired eyes and thinking, who is that woman and where did I go? I wasn't strong anymore, at least not in the way the world defines it. But it was in those soft, sorrowful moments that I heard something deeper than my own thoughts, a voice, quiet and kind. You don't have to be strong on your own anymore. I will be your strength. And I knew. That was him, the one I had believed in for years, but perhaps never truly leaned on. Aging doesn't come with loud fanfare. It slips in like a change of season. And suddenly the things you once clung to, your role, your usefulness, your busyness, start to feel like old coats that no longer fit. You begin to ask, who am I when no one needs me? What do I have to offer when I can't do what I used to? And most of all, where do I place my trust now? That's when I learned something. I didn't need to be the strongest woman in the room anymore. I didn't need to carry everything on my back. I needed to let go and lean into God. Let Him become the strength I could no longer find in myself. This story I'll share with you today isn't polished or perfect. It's just true. Sometimes it's messy, sometimes it's funny, and sometimes it aches in ways that are hard to describe. But woven through every word is hope. And if you're willing, I'll take your hand and tell you about this journey, not with flashy wisdom, but with the quiet confidence of someone who has lived through enough to finally know what really matters. So pull up a chair, dear friend. Let's talk like old friends do about growing older, about letting go, about finding strength not in our bodies, but in our souls. Let's talk about how even when the knees grow weak and the days grow long, our hearts can still hum a quiet song that says, as I grow old, God is my strength. You don't really notice it at first. Growing old isn't like falling off a cliff. It's more like walking into the ocean. The changes come gradually, almost tenderly. A little stiffness in the morning, a memory that slips through your fingers like sand, the sound of your name being said less often, the invitations that slow to a trickle. At first, you brush it off. Oh, it's just a busy week, you tell yourself. Everyone's got their own lives. You say it with a smile, a practiced grace, the kind women like us have mastered after decades of holding families, jobs, and expectations together. But then it starts to sink in. You find yourself standing at the kitchen sink, staring out the window longer than you used to. Not because the garden is any more interesting, but because no one really needs you in the living room anymore. You start checking your phone, not to reply, but to see if it lit up at all. There was a day I stood in the supermarket, holding a can of soup, and suddenly I couldn't remember why I was there. Not just the soup, no, I mean the bigger why. Why was I pushing this cart? Who was I cooking for? My husband had passed. The kids lived hours away. I didn't have anyone coming over. I stood there for a full minute, surrounded by strangers moving around me like I was invisible. And I remember thinking, has the world already moved on and I just didn't notice? You see, no one warns you about this part of aging. They talk about wrinkles and retirement, about needing more calcium and forgetting your keys. But they don't talk about the quiet disappearance, the subtle way you begin to fade from the center of the stage to the edge of the curtains. There's an ache that comes with that. It's not dramatic, it's not loud, it's just there lingering like the scent of something burning far away. And it's not just about loneliness, it's about losing definition. When your days were once filled with purpose-raising children, managing a household, showing up at work, suddenly you have time, too much of it. Time to think, time to remember, time to feel things you've spent decades pushing aside. There was one morning I sat at the edge of my bed for nearly 20 minutes, just sat there. Not because I was tired, but because I couldn't think of a reason to rush. There were no lunches to pack, no meetings to make, no mouths to feed. I was just there. I know that sounds simple, but let me tell you, sitting still can be the loudest thing you've ever done. The silence of aging is not empty. It's full of memories, full of regrets, full of questions no one is answering anymore. You start to wonder if everything you poured into others, your love, your time, your best years left anything behind for yourself. And in that wondering, something else creeps in. A fear. Not of dying, no. Most of us by this age have made some kind of peace with the idea that life doesn't go on forever. No, the fear is this. What if I keep living and no one really sees me anymore? That fear is a quiet thief. It doesn't scream, it whispers. It tells you to smile at the family dinner even when you feel like crying. It tells you not to call your children too often so you don't seem needy. It tells you to keep shrinking, to stay quiet, to not be a burden. But here's the twist, dear friend. I listened to those whispers for too long. I let them shape my days, and soon I didn't recognize my own life. Until one morning, I looked at myself in the mirror and said out loud, I miss me. That was the beginning of something. I didn't know it yet, but it was the first time I stopped pretending everything was fine. I started to ask a different kind of question. Not what have I lost, but what remains? And the answer didn't come in a flash of lightning. It came slowly, in the quiet, in the softness of a sunrise, in the pages of scripture, in the voice of a God who hadn't forgotten me, even when I had forgotten myself. As I grow old, I whispered to him one night, I don't want to disappear. And I heard it again, not in words, but in the stillness. You won't, because I see you and I will be your strength. There's a stage in aging no one talks about, but many of us live through it quietly. It's that strange little season when you try to prove you still matter. You cook more than you need to, just in case someone drops by. You say yes to babysitting the grandkids, even when your back is screaming because you want to be helpful. You volunteer for things at church not always out of passion, but because it makes you feel needed again. You scroll through your phone at night and debate whether to send a just checking in text, wondering if it's too much. I've done it all. There was a season when I kept baking pies. I'm not even a pie person, but it made me feel relevant, useful. Like if I showed up to a family dinner with something warm and golden, I would still have a seat at the table, not just physically, but emotionally. People would smile, thank me, maybe even hug me a little longer. And for a while, it worked. They ate the pie. They praised the crust. But here's what I noticed. I started putting more effort into being seen than into simply being. It's exhausting, isn't it? This invisible pressure to keep up the image of the strong, capable matriarch, the wise one, the dependable one, the cheerful one, the I'm fine, don't worry about me one. I remember one afternoon I was sitting in the guest bedroom folding laundry that didn't belong to me. My daughter had left it in a basket, and while visiting, I thought it would be a nice surprise to fold it for her. But halfway through, I realized my hands were aching, my knees were stiff, and no one had asked me to do this. Why was I doing it? Because I wanted her to think of me as valuable. Because I was terrified that if I stopped doing things, I'd stop being loved. Now, I know that sounds dramatic, but deep down, many of us carry that belief that our worth is tied to our usefulness, that if we're no longer productive, we're dispensable. It's a painful lie, and it's not one we chose. It was planted over time through years of praise only when we gave, smiles only when we helped, attention only when we performed. And now, in these older years, when our bodies can't keep up with that endless cycle, we're left staring at ourselves in the mirror asking, if I stop folding laundry, if I stop baking pies, if I just rest, will they still care? But I'll tell you what changed me. It wasn't some big sermon or therapy session. It was a conversation, one of those quiet, unplanned ones that sneak up on you. I was on the porch with a friend, another woman in her 70s. We were drinking lukewarm tea and talking about the ache in our hips when she said, almost offhand, "You know what I've realized? I'm not a role anymore. I'm a soul. And souls don't expire when they stop doing things. They shine brighter when they start being honest." I laughed, then cried, then sat in silence. That sentence hit me like a wind through the trees. I'm not a role anymore. I'm a soul. I had spent so many years performing being the good wife, the good mother, the helpful friend that I'd forgotten what it felt like to just be, to sit with myself, to be seen, not for what I can give, but for who I am. That evening, I went home, sat down on the couch, and didn't get up to do the dishes. I didn't ask if anyone needed anything. I didn't refill the water glasses or fluff the pillows. And you know what? No one died. The world didn't collapse. But something inside me shifted. It was uncomfortable at first, like wearing new shoes that don't quite fit yet, but also freeing. Because for the first time in years, I felt held not by duty or expectation, but by grace. That's when the words came again, not loudly, but surely. As you grow old, I am your strength. It didn't mean I'd never feel weak. It didn't mean people would suddenly stop overlooking me or that I'd never feel invisible again. But it meant I no longer had to earn my worth. It was already there, already mine, already enough. God wasn't waiting for me to impress him. He wasn't checking how many tasks I completed today. He was simply sitting beside me, whispering, "You can rest now. Your value is not in what you do. It's in who you are, and who you are is my beloved." There comes a time when the noise of life fades. The kids are grown. The house doesn't echo with footsteps anymore. The phone doesn't ring as often. And suddenly the days feel wide, not in a free, exciting way. No, more like a stretch of land where nothing grows. I remember the first time I felt it, that oppressive silence. My husband had passed 2 years earlier. The last of the children had moved out, and it was just me and the hum of the refrigerator. I made a cup of tea and sat by the window, waiting for something. But nothing came. Not a knock. Not a call. Not even the neighbor's dog barking like he used to. Just the ticking of the clock on the wall. It's funny. You think silence will be peaceful. You imagine it like one of those spa commercials, gentle music, candles flickering, a woman smiling into the void like she's achieved enlightenment. But real silence? The kind that fills the room when no one needs you? It's not peaceful. Not at first. It's deafening. Because in that stillness, every voice you've been ignoring gets louder. The regrets, the what ifs, the words you should have said, the ones you wish you'd never spoken. And worst of all, the question, who am I now? You start to measure your worth by the empty space you leave behind. Is the house too clean because no one's walking through it anymore? Is the mailbox full of ads instead of letters? Is your name still being said when you're not in the room? I remember one particular day, cold, gray, mid-February. I had opened the closet and stared at a row of coats. His coat was still there. My late husband's navy blue jacket, still smelling faintly of his cologne. I ran my fingers across the sleeve and whispered, "Are you still with me?" Silence. But this time, I didn't fill it with noise. I didn't turn on the TV or call someone or bake muffins I didn't want to eat. I just sat down on the floor and cried. I cried for all the years that had passed too quickly, for the things I thought I'd have time to say, for the realization that the world had kept spinning and I had been quietly left behind. But here's the strange and beautiful thing. That day, in that puddle of grief on the hardwood floor, something happened. I began to hear another kind of silence. Not the hollow kind that shouts your loneliness back at you, but a sacred stillness. The kind that holds you gently. The kind that listens when you finally stop talking. And somewhere in that silence, I sensed it again. That soft, familiar whisper I had been ignoring. Well, be still, I am here. Not flashy, not thunderous, just present, just enough. That's when I began to understand something no one had ever told me. Silence is not always an absence. Sometimes it's an invitation. An invitation to sit with your own soul. An invitation to hear God without all the background noise. An invitation to heal. You see, I used to fear silence because I thought it meant I had been forgotten. But now I think it's where God speaks the loudest. Not in the noise of the world, but in the quiet corners of a weary heart. There's a verse I keep near my bed now. Psalm 46:10. Be still and know that I am God. I never truly understood that until these years of stillness. Now I know, and slowly, the silence that once frightened me began to comfort me. It became a kind of rhythm tea in the morning, soft music in the afternoon, reading a passage of scripture aloud just to fill the air with truth, talking to God out loud like he's sitting across from me. Because maybe he is. I know it may sound silly, but I even started narrating my day to him. I'm making toast, Lord. Nothing exciting, but you already know that. I'm wearing the scarf Emma gave me. I wish she called more, but I know she loves me. And sometimes I just say thank you for this breath, because honestly, if I can still breathe, then I still have purpose. Even if that purpose today is simply to sit by the window and be present. So, dear friend, if you're listening to this, sitting in a quiet room and wondering if the world has moved on without you, let me tell you, you are not alone. You are not forgotten. You are not done. The silence may feel empty, but it is full of possibility. And within it, if you're willing to be still, you may just hear what I did. As you grow old, I am your strength. You know, I used to think rest was something you earned, like dessert after dinner or a prize after working hard. Rest, in my mind, was only deserved after a full day of to-do lists, clean kitchens, phone calls returned, and boxes checked. And if I hadn't done enough, well, then I wasn't allowed to rest. I carried that belief well into my 60s, like an invisible backpack I couldn't take off. Even when no one expected much of me anymore, I still expected everything from myself. I would feel guilty if I took a nap. I would apologize for not answering messages right away. I would push through physical pain just to appear dependable. Old habits don't go quietly, do they? But here's what changed me one very ordinary Tuesday afternoon. It was a rainy day, the kind where the sky forgets how to be anything but gray. I was folding laundry again, this time my own, and suddenly I felt a sharp pain in my lower back. It wasn't the first time, but this time, instead of ignoring it, I did something different. I sat down, not just on a chair, on the floor, right there in the middle of the hallway, surrounded by towels and socks and half-folded pajamas. And I said out loud, because talking to yourself is completely normal at my age. No one is going to applaud me for pushing through this. No one's handing out medals for laundry. I think I'm done performing for a world that isn't even watching. I don't know why it hit me that day. Maybe it was the rain. Maybe it was my back reminding me I'm not 30 anymore. But for the first time, I gave myself permission. Not just to rest, but to do less. To not rush. To not explain. To not apologize. And in the quiet that followed, something unexpected filled the space. Peace. It wasn't dramatic. It wasn't fireworks. Just peace. A simple, subtle shift inside me, like my soul was finally exhaling after holding its breath for decades. That day, I started experimenting with the word no. Not the angry kind, not the defensive, dramatic kind, just a soft, simple no. No, I won't be attending the event this weekend. No, I can't commit to that right now. No, I don't feel up to it, but thank you for thinking of me. At first, it felt unnatural. Wrong, even. like I was disappointing someone, like I wasn't doing enough to earn my place in their world. But here's the secret no one tells you. Every no to something that drains you is a yes to something that restores you. It's a yes to slower mornings, a yes to that book you've been meaning to read, a yes to your aching knees getting a break, a yes to God gently calling you back to stillness. One morning, I decided to leave my phone in the other room while I drank my tea. Just 10 minutes. No news, no notifications, no text to answer. It was awkward at first. My hands didn't know what to do. My brain wanted to reach for stimulation. But slowly I began to feel something else, presence. The warmth of the mug in my hands. The sound of birds outside my window. The soft rustle of wind in the tree just beyond the porch. All things that had been there for years, but I'd been too busy to notice. I looked up and whispered, "Is this you, Lord?" And in that moment, I didn't hear anything back, but I didn't need to, because I knew. Sometimes God doesn't answer like thunder. Sometimes he answers with quiet. I think that's what aging has taught me more than anything. The power of quiet. The holiness of slowness. The deep wisdom of not always reacting. We live in a world that equates speed with value. But at this age, I'm finally learning that the slower path is not the weaker one. It's the deeper one. There's something sacred about saying, I will not be rushed. I will not prove myself today. I will not abandon myself just to be liked. Because, dear friend, we have abandoned ourselves long enough. We've said yes when we meant no. We've smiled when we wanted to cry. We've stayed up late to make everyone else comfortable, while silently wishing someone would ask us how we're doing. But now I choose rest. I choose sacred slowness. I choose peace over performance. And in that quiet choosing, I hear him again. As you grow old, I am your strength. Not the strength to keep doing, but the strength to stop. To sit, to breathe, to be. There's a funny thing that happens when you spend enough time alone. You stop feeling lonely. No, really. At first, it's uncomfortable, like being stuck in a room with a stranger who shares your face. You don't know what to say to her. You don't quite trust her. She looks tired. She frowns a lot. She sighs too often. You keep busy just to avoid making eye contact with her. But after a while, something begins to shift. The silence becomes familiar. The stranger becomes a friend. And one day, you sit down across from yourself with a cup of tea and say, "You know, you're not so bad." I didn't always know how to be alone. In fact, I was terrified of it. When my husband died, the nights were the worst. The bed was too big. The house made new noises. The space beside me felt like a canyon. I would sleep with the TV on, not because I was watching it, but because the noise was easier than the ache. But somewhere between year 1 and year 2 of widowhood, I stopped needing the background noise. I stopped keeping the TV on. I stopped filling every corner of the day with something, and I started listening. To the birds in the early morning, to the creaks of the house settling, to the rhythm of my own breath, to God who, it turns out, had been trying to talk to me for years, but couldn't get a word in. I remember one evening I was sitting on the porch, watching the sun dip low when I realized I hadn't spoken to anyone all day. No one had called, no one had come by, and for a split second I felt the familiar sting of being forgotten. But then I noticed something. I wasn't sad. I was peaceful. I was sipping tea from my favorite chipped mug. I was wrapped in a sweater that still smelled faintly of lavender. And I was watching the sky do something glorious that no one else seemed to notice. It was beautiful. It was mine. And it was enough. That's when I realized solitude is not punishment. It's invitation. It's the door to the kind of friendship you can't find in a crowded room, the friendship between you and your own soul. These days, I talk to myself often. I laugh at my own silly thoughts. I narrate what I'm doing like I'm hosting a cooking show. And now we sprinkle the cinnamon, not because anyone's watching, but because it makes the apples feel loved. I dance in the kitchen sometimes too, badly, with a creaky knee and a slow shuffle. But I do it anyway, because why not? Who's going to judge me, my houseplants? And you know what? I think God smiles at those moments. I think he delights in my small joys. I think he chuckles when I put on socks that don't match, or when I burn the toast and pretend it's artisan style. Because he's not waiting for me to be productive. He's not expecting me to be someone I used to be. He's simply walking with me, sitting beside me, smiling at the way I'm finally beginning to enjoy the life he gave me. And I think that's the miracle of aging no one talks about. We go from being needed by everyone to being wanted by the one who needs nothing, but still chooses us every single day. So now I embrace the solitude. I light a candle in the evening just for myself. I say grace before eating, even if it's just toast and jam. I thank God out loud for the quiet, the soft pajamas, the fact that no one's rushing me out the door. Because here, in this slow and spacious place, I have found me again. Not the mother, not the wife, not the fixer or the doer or the helper. Just me, soft-hearted, slower moving, still deeply alive, still laughing at my own corny jokes, still singing along to hymns in the kitchen, still whispering, "Lord, thank you for not giving up on me," and still hearing his reply in the gentlest of ways, "As you grow old, I am your strength." It surprises you how sharp memory can be at this age. You'd think that, with all the jokes about forgetfulness and misplaced glasses, the past would start to fade. But no, the past, at least for me, has grown louder, not quieter. I forget where I put my keys, but I remember the exact sound of my daughter's laughter when she was 4. I can't recall the name of the movie I watched last week, but I remember the smell of my mother's kitchen in summer lemongrass, soap, and something warm in the oven we weren't allowed to touch until guests came. Isn't that funny? The way memory chooses what to keep? Aging is strange like that. Your body slows down, but your soul keeps flipping pages. Sometimes backwards, sometimes to a page you thought you'd torn out long ago. Just the other day, I was folding towels when I suddenly remembered a conversation I had with my father. I was 10. We were sitting on the front steps. He told me that one day, I'd be a woman people could rely on, and I believed him. I spent decades trying to prove him right. But in that moment, standing in my little laundry room, holding a blue towel that smelled like lavender, I realized something. I've never stopped being that little girl, hoping someone would say, "I see you, you're doing good." That memory brought tears to my eyes, not because it was painful, but because it reminded me of how much of my life I've lived trying to be enough. Enough for my parents, enough for my husband, enough for my kids, enough for church ladies and PTA moms and neighbors and everyone in between. And now that the house is quiet, now that I'm no longer cooking for 5 or washing uniforms or remembering dentist appointments for someone else, the question has changed. It's no longer, am I enough for them? It's, am I enough for me? Memory is a strange teacher. It brings back things you're not ready to feel, then invites you to sit with them. The birthday your best friend forgot. The moment you didn't say I love you before the door closed. The apology that never came. The forgiveness you never gave. But here's the thing. As painful as it can be, I no longer run from memory. I meet it like an old friend who sometimes overstays her welcome, but who also reminds me who I am. You see, when I remember my mother's hands, I remember strength wrapped in softness. When I remember my wedding day, I remember shaky knees and sacred promises. When I remember holding my newborn son, I remember the weight of love I had no idea my arms could carry. And when I remember my darkest nights, I also remember who showed up. There was one night after my husband's funeral, after the casseroles stopped coming, after the calls dwindled, I sat on the floor of my bedroom and cried until I couldn't breathe. My chest was tight, my face hot, my hands clenched into fists. I felt like a ghost in my own life. And right there, in the middle of my grief, I whispered, "Where are you, Lord?" And I kid you not, I felt arms wrap around me. No one was there, not physically, but I felt it. A presence so steady, so real, so gentle. And the memory of that night has never left me. It's become my anchor. So now, when I sit in the garden and smell a flower that reminds me of my childhood, or when I hear a song that brings back a summer romance long gone, or when a flash of memory comes sharp and unexpected, I don't push it away. I say, "Okay, memory, what are you here to teach me?" And often the answer is this: you lived, you loved, you gave it your best. And through it all, God was there even in the moments you thought he was silent. Sometimes I sit with photo albums open on my lap. Sometimes I talk to the faces I see. You were beautiful, you know. I hope you knew I loved you. I forgive you now. Memory is not just about looking back, it's about looking inward. And what I've learned is that when you walk through your memories with God beside you, they don't haunt you. They heal you. You see the patterns, the grace in the mess, the thread of mercy you missed the first time around. And through it all, through the joys, the regrets, the heartbreaks and celebrations, I keep hearing him whisper, "As you grow old, I am your strength, not just strength for the body, but strength for the remembering, strength for the forgiving, strength for the releasing, because only when we let memories soften us can we truly be free." When I was younger, I used to think legacy meant something big. A foundation named after you, a plaque on a wall, a family heirloom passed down through generations, something grand, something remembered. But now, sitting here with silver hair and a slower heartbeat, I see things differently. Legacy, I've learned, isn't what you leave behind when you die. It's what you live into every single day in the way you show up for the world, even when it doesn't notice. It's in the way you speak to the cashier when your hands are shaking. It's in the way you leave the last piece of pie for someone else. It's in the way you call your friend just to say, "I thought of you today." These are the moments that never make the news, but heaven notices them. I used to worry that I hadn't done enough with my life, that I hadn't traveled enough, earned enough, contributed enough. But somewhere along the way, God rewrote that story for me. One morning I was sweeping the porch, something I've done 1,000 times, and I paused. The broom in my hand, the wind brushing my cheeks, the faint smell of rain in the air. And I heard it again, that whisper that has become my steady companion. This too is holy. Sweeping the porch, feeding the birds, smiling at strangers in the grocery store. Listening with your whole heart when someone tells you a story they've told 100 times. It's all sacred. It all matters. We live in a world obsessed with outcomes, likes, followers, bank accounts, awards. But in the eyes of God, faithfulness in the little things is the highest form of legacy. Do you want to know what my grandson remembered about me when he wrote me a card for my last birthday? It wasn't that I paid for his braces. It wasn't that I helped raise him when his parents were going through a hard time. It was this: "Grandma, I love how you always make toast just the way I like it. And how you let me win at cards even though I know you're better." That's it. That's my legacy. And you know what? That's enough for me. Because what he was really saying was this: "You made me feel seen. You made me feel safe. You made me feel loved." And isn't that what we all want to leave behind? Not fame, not perfection, just footprints made of gentleness. I think about the women who shaped me too. My grandmother with her warm, wrinkled hands. My high school English teacher who once told me I had a voice worth listening to. My neighbor, Miss Louise, who always hummed hymns while watering her roses. None of them had statues. None of them went viral, but all of them live in me. Their kindness, their calm, their quiet strength. That's legacy. And here's something I didn't understand until recently. Sometimes your greatest legacy isn't in what you do. It's in what you let go of. The bitterness you choose not to pass down. The gossip you decide to stop. The comparison you release. The need to be right. The need to be needed. Letting go of those things makes room for something more beautiful to grow. Peace, patience, presence. Now, when I wake up in the morning, I ask a simple question. How can I be a gentle presence in the world today? Not a fixer, not a performer, just someone who leaves behind kindness like breadcrumbs for someone else to follow. Some days it's as small as smiling at a tired nurse. Other days it's writing a letter to someone I haven't spoken to in years. But most of the time, it's simply being fully me present, honest, and grounded in the quiet truth that I am still of value. Even now, even here. And when I forget, when the old tapes play, "You're too old now. You don't matter. You've missed your moment." I pause. I take a deep breath, and I remember again, as you grow old, I am your strength. Strength to keep loving in quiet ways. Strength to believe that softness is not weakness. Strength to trust that the world is still blessed by your existence, even if it doesn't always say so. So if today you feel invisible, if you wonder what your legacy will be, Let me tell you something that took me 65 years to learn. Your legacy is not in how loudly the world remembers you. It's in how gently God held your hand through every unseen moment, and how many times you reached back and held someone else's. There's a moment somewhere in your later years when you stop chasing. You stop reaching for what you thought you should have been by now. You stop trying to convince the world of your worth. You stop running after people who were never meant to stay. And you begin slowly, softly to come home. Not to a house or a place, but to yourself. I didn't always know how to do that. For so long, I was a woman for everyone else. A mother, a wife, a sister, a friend, a helper, a good neighbor, a good listener, a shoulder, a strong back, a warm meal, a soft word, 1,000 things for 1,000 people. And I don't regret any of it. But somewhere along the way, I disappeared from my own story. I was writing chapters for others, forgetting to leave space for myself. Until one day, not long ago, I looked in the mirror and smiled, not because I looked young or beautiful or camera ready, but because I finally recognized the woman staring back. She was not flawless. She was not flashy. She was not famous, but she was free, and that is everything. At 65, I don't want to be anyone else anymore. I don't need to prove anything. I don't need to be the most useful person in the room. I don't need to explain why I'm tired, or why I've started saying no, or why I like silence more than noise. I just want to live well in the time that remains. Not fast, not loud, not perfect, but fully, honestly, gratefully. I want to savor slow mornings. I want to write letters I never sent. I want to say I love you without fear of awkward silence. I want to hold my coffee with both hands, sit by the window and whisper, "Thank you, Lord, for this breath." Because this right here, right now, is still life, and I'm still here to live it. There are no fireworks at this stage, no parades, no loud applause, but there is peace, there is God, and there is me finally at home in my own soul. And if you're listening to this, if you've walked with me through this story, I want you to know, you are not behind, you are not too late, you have not missed it. What's meant for you will find you even now, even here, even in this slower season. Maybe you've been waiting for someone to remind you that you still matter. Maybe you needed permission to rest, to begin again, to let go of what doesn't fit anymore, to stop apologizing for being exactly who you are. So let me be the one to say it softly but clearly. You are allowed to be loved in your undone state. You are allowed to be enough even when you're not busy. You are allowed to be held by a God who never once considered your age a problem. And if the world ever makes you feel like you're fading, like you're not seen, like you've become a burden, you let that thought fall away like autumn leaves. And you remember this instead. As I grow old, God is my strength. My friend, if we have strength for nothing else, let it be the strength to sit in stillness, the strength to forgive ourselves, the strength to smile without explanation, the strength to rise in the morning, stretch our arms and say, I am still here, I am still His, and that is enough. Thank you for spending this time with me. If this story found its way to your heart, if it made you smile or cry or simply feel seen, I hope you'll leave a comment and tell me, even just a few words, as I grow old, God is my strength. Because sometimes the simplest truths carry the deepest power. And sometimes being heard, really heard, is all the healing we need. Until next time, be gentle with yourself. And remember, God is not finished with you yet.